Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. The show is also known as Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. Today, I am really excited to have Tamara Taggart to join me. Tamara is actually she's the founder, the president of Down Syndrome BC. She's also, she also does podcasts for Telus Talks. Tamara, thank you so much. This is great to have you on. It's been a very exciting moment. I've been waiting to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for asking me.
Yeah, this is great. So Tamara, before we get started, you were an anchor for the news hour. I guess time goes by so fast now. But, yeah.
It does go by so fast. Yeah, it's been 6 years since I left TV. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I remember tuning in and watching you on TV and watching all the news coverage and stuff. And recently, when I reached out to you, I thought, I said to Neil, I'd love to get Tamara Taggart on. He goes, well, that would be a huge get. And I said, yeah. I said, because last time I actually saw you on any media stuff was actually on the Mo Amir show.
Ah, yes, Mo.
I love watching
Mo
Amir, and he's one of my
The Summer of George. We watched the Summer of George. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Summer of George. Yeah, I love Mo, and he's become a really good friend. We met in, I think it was in 2019, and he interviewed me, and it just kind of went from there, and we've become really good friends. He's a good guy.
He's fantastic. I love tuning into all his shows, and I correspond with Mo quite a bit. And in the near future, I might actually be on his show. So I'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
so I'll put a good word in for you, Brent.
We're gonna trade podcasts back and forth.
Exactly.
There we are.
I kind of wanted to go a little bit down memory lane because a lot of everybody here is roughly the same age. Like I remember when you came on as the weather person.
Yeah.
And but also I wanted to go back to when you did the BCIT broadcast communications it was 1991.
Oh, and, boy.
One of your fellow grads was John Shorthouse.
Yes.
Yes.
And of course, Canucks fans will know John Shorthouse as the play-by-play for Canucks broadcasts. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So he was in the journalism program. I was in the radio program, and it was. I loved being at BCIT. It was so fun, and it was 91. It seems like a million years ago. Before there was, I remember we had these computers there, and they were these bricks, and the flashing line we didn't even know how to use them. They were so slow. It seemed faster to write it out by hand, but my, oh my, how things have changed.
I graduated in 1987, and the year I graduated, and I think it was the year before in grade 11, the school districts, and it was in Burnaby that I grew up, and the school districts back then would share the computers across the whole district for 1 week. They would bring in the cart of these computers, and there was maybe I don't know, maybe 6 computers for the whole district.
Yeah.
And they would bring them in for the week, and you have them for a week, and then they ship them off again.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? Not to be cynical, but in some cases, that's what it's like still today for some kids with iPads and stuff like that. Like some kids get them, but other kids don't. Some things haven't changed.
I remember one computer I got was at the time it was a state of the art one. It was actually the first color computer that was actually just came out, and it had a dual disk drive. It had the hard disk drive and the floppy one. I thought this is so neat. Everyone in the class is like, well, how is that fair? I actually had won it actually through a scholarship in school, and awarded it. And I was like, well, this is great, right? And so I said, well, can I take it home with me? No, it has to stay in the classroom. Oh, man. Yeah. I tried, but I did manage to get one at home. I saved up and did a paper route and saved, and I wanted one identical, and it cost me a lot of money. So
Yeah.
and it
Oh, yeah.
became to realize that the value for a dollar, how you can stretch the dollar back. Of course, decades ago, you can get more value for your dollar. And speaking of that, like just recently, Tamara, I just wanted to kind of get your take. As it, I was just actually on a newscast actually through CBC. They reached out to me and they were doing a story, and they were talking about PWD, persons with disabilities in relationships. And my view like on being penalized, for getting into marriage or being in a relationship, and my viewpoints on it. And they just recently did a story. I just all of a sudden they reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in talking about it. I said sure. I said, can you tell me how you came about me? And like, I watched your podcast. I'm like, oh
That's
wow,
so good.
yeah. So I did
Yeah.
a newscast on that, and it was really good.
Good.
And
Yeah. Well, it's important to keep talking about that stuff, right? Because a lot of people don't understand. They
well,
don't
yeah, because
they don't know how things work.
they penalize people for either getting into a relationship, and they claw back, like they classify it as one income for a family, a unit. And in this day and age, it's already hard enough to get by as an individual without
Yeah.
actually having not having two incomes, one income. So it's hard, and that's why I keep advocating going forward to make changes in the system. And having allies reaching out, or how it affects the system, how it affects people in general, and having yourself coming on and talking about the Down syndrome, how BC, how did you find how did you get involved getting that going?
Well, it was in 2018, I read the news report about Florence Gerard. And Florence Gerard was a woman with Down syndrome who was living in home care. She had been living with the same woman for 10 years. And Florence was found dead in her caregiver's home by Coquitlam RCMP. And her cause of death was malnutrition. She was just like 50.3 pounds when she was found.
Wow.
And she starved to death. And I all I could see every time I see someone with Down syndrome, I think of my son Beckett. And my whole when you become a parent, your perspective on everything changes. When you become a parent, and your child has a disability, uh, your perspective changes even more, in a good way, I think. And Beckett has really being Beckett's parent has really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And so the story about Florence, uh, it hit me to my core, and I could not I just couldn't get Florence out of my mind. And so I, got in touch with Florence's sister, Sharon. Sharon and I have become friends. Sharon and I started advocating for her sister, Florence. And the caregiver was charged, the caregiver's boss, if you will. And then, of course, CLBC is in charge of all of that. And um, the charges were stayed against the facility, or I don't know what you want to call them, the organization that employed the caregiver. And the caregiver was charged, and she was found guilty of one charge, and she got, community service and a curfew. And we advocated for an appeal. It happened. And then she was found guilty of, they disagreed with what the judge had said. So that felt not like a victory, but it felt like we, it's important that Florence's death, that we all learn something from it.
No, of course, yes.
And that we're better for it, right? We don't know how many people with disabilities die in care because we can't find out those numbers, right? They don't share anything.
No.
Nothing
to see here.
Nothing to see
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Look
We
away.
have no idea.
Yeah.
And the only time
Yeah.
we hear of something is if a family member speaks out or something really tragic happens, like with Florence. And so I didn't know what to do in those first days before I met Sharon, her sister. And so I put something on Facebook and I said, with the story about Florence, and I said, I see my son, I see all people, I see all of us in Florence, and this can't happen again. And let's get together and let's create change. And all of a sudden I had like 200 people responding and saying, yeah, let's do this. And then I had a like a Zoom with all these people.
Oh, wow.
And it went on for a long time, and we all had something to say. And I didn't know what to do with it because now I had all these emails and people, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? What am I doing now? And then two of my friends who are also mums to kids with Down syndrome, they were like, Tamara, what are you doing with all these? Like, what are we doing? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's just like a lot. And so the three of us then were like, okay, let's do something. And then another friend entered the picture, and she also has a little boy with Down syndrome. And so between the four of us, we then were like, okay, let's do this. Let's have a name. And I was like, how about Down syndrome BC? Super original, right?
Original, yeah.
But sometimes you just have to say what it is.
Exactly.
You just have to say, you don't need to get fancy. We don't need it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And it was very important to me that we don't accept any government money. I don't believe that you can be critical of the government if you're accepting money from them, because it's very easy to be cut off.
Yeah.
And we're not fundraising to do anything. What we're doing is we're advocating and we're informing, and we are uniting, and we are we have no idea how many people in Canada have Down syndrome. We have no data. We don't know about people being educated. We don't know but we do know that people with Down syndrome, like most people who have a disability, are discriminated against every single day, not only in this province, but in this country, everywhere. And so, that's how we started. And so we have we have like 300 members, and it's free. And the only thing that, the only qualification to join Down syndrome BC is that you love or care for somebody with Down syndrome. That's all. And that you want a better life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And keep advocating for change and bringing the awareness to what it is. And Down syndrome, I mean it affects anybody with the disability. I mean, who has that? I mean, they're born with that disability, and that's who they are. And with government saying, well, we need to get a diagnosis, and jump through all this red tape and all these hoops. And that's why I got right behind you. Probably wondering why there's like a pink unicorn.
Pink unicorn. We can talk about pink unicorns a little bit later.
Yeah, we will.
But I just wanted as well to segue or springboard off of kind of what everybody's talking about right now, and I think that's the I think when you're, especially when you're born with a disability or you get an acquired one, there's the assumption, I think, in a lot of people's minds that when you're advocating, you're really only advocating for yourself. Like it's like a selfish thing where like I have to advocate for myself, and I'm not advocating for anybody else. And that is like so not true. And again, I don't want to make this show about me today, but I just wanted to like throw in the fact that like when my first wife passed away, and and then the government started like clawing back my pension as unearned income, my survivor's pension as unearned income. Like, yeah, it sucks that in the last like 11 years I've had like $70,000 clawed back of my survivor's pensions and clawed back from the provincial government, and that sucks. You know, but at some point, like I've been fighting again. I've been fighting this for 11 years, and I probably would have given up after the first year if it was only just about me. I would have just done it for about a year and then just threw in the towel and that's it. But then you get to a point where you realize this is more than just about me. This is like a collective thing we're doing, and this is kind of where I wanted to segue into your Telus Talks, where it's a corporate body thing. Like, I mean, of course, Telus is a corporation, but we have to think of ourselves as corporate bodies too. Like, as a human being, we can be corporate bodies. It's not just about me, the individual, but it's thinking corporately about humanity. And I just wanted to make the point, and again, nobody paid me to say this, but I like the fact when you have big corporations like TELUS stepping forward and saying, we're not afraid to enter the political realm and talk about social justice issues and things like that. I think that's important to like have this like not go beyond the individual and it's all about me, and have this more a corporate mindset of like we got to do something to push the needle and improve things, right?
Well, I'm glad to say that too, Neil, because it's bringing people together with common interests and common disabilities, and talking about the issues that affect their lives. And I this is amazing, so great, Tamara, that we're having this discussion regarding. I mean, it's your son has a disability, and it's not. There's no shame in the world of saying a person has a disability. Like, let's talk about it. Let's bring people together with common interests. And I think in society, I mean, I know growing up, I won't go off on a big rant, but I mean, growing up when I was young, when I was in elementary school, visual impairment, and basically they tried segregating me away, and I kept speaking up, and they kept saying, no, it's fine. I go, no, I don't feel comfortable. Like, why are you putting me in another room? Well, we don't want other kids to pick on you because you're learning to touch type really fast. And I could touch type faster than I could write coordination wise. And I felt very uncomfortable. And I said, no, I want to be part of the class. No, this is how it has to be. So really, in a nutshell, it's being inclusive with all your peers around you. And it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to feel belonged with everybody else. And I think that's how society is now changed. Like we're changing the channel on it, saying, yes, let's talk about these things, because it's so important to put people on the same page rather than chapters.
For sure. I mean, Neil, what you were saying, I appreciate that. And, with the podcast that I host, we've done over 200 episodes, and we talk to lots of different people about lots of different topics. And I have a producer, and we talk about.
Is he as good as me?
It's a she.
Oh, okay. I just had to throw that in there. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. But it is nice because although the podcast, does have the TELUS name in it because, I host this for them, they are completely hands off when it comes to which guests we choose and the questions I ask. And, and I do come into things with a social justice lens, right? I always have. And I do believe that the more we tell our stories and the more we listen to other people's stories, the better we can understand somebody else's lived experience or their opinions. We may not agree with them, whatever it might be. But there's also facts, right? And so when we talk about clawbacks for people with disabilities, that's a fact. Now, the average person doesn't know that that happens. The average person doesn't know that people with Down syndrome in British Columbia get no support. They don't know that. The other thing that people don't know is that my son is in a segregated classroom and has been for his entire high school experience in the city of Vancouver.
Oh.
The city of Vancouver segregates children with disabilities when they enter high school. And that is a fact.
That's crazy.
And when I say that, it makes people really uncomfortable. And they can't understand that my son's in a segregated classroom. They say that's impossible. It's not impossible. My son goes to school. He arrives at a different time than the regular students. He goes in a different door than the regular students. He leaves school at a different time. He is in the same classroom with the same students and the same teacher for his entire high school, all 5 years. And that is the reality. And that's called segregation. He doesn't get to go to, he doesn't have a homeroom like the other students. His experience is very different than his peers, you know? And so you talk about, you know, like people need to know this, and it's wrong. And the school board hates it every time I tweet about it. They hate it when I talk about it. And I'm going to keep talking about it. And, you know, Beckett is in grade 12 right now. He's about to have his psych ed. He's never had a psych ed. And I had an interview with a psychologist about it in June of last year. Because they need my permission to do the psych ed. The only reason he needs a psych ed is so that he has access to funding through CLBC when he turns 19. He just turned 17. So that's 2 years from now. But we need to do this now, right? And I said to her, well, like, what do you need to assess? He has Down syndrome. There's no secrets with Down syndrome. I can go to the bookstore right now and get 5-6 books on Down syndrome. I have books on my desk right now about Down syndrome. There's no secrets. We know what it's an extra chromosome. We know what that does. We know everything. There's no secrets. Yet you need to do a psych ed on my son. So tell me about that. What do you need to do a psych ed for? And the answer was to find out if he has an intellectual disability. And I said, he does. He has Down syndrome. And she said, well, but there's, you know, it's like, what type of intellectual disability does he have? It, you know, could be mild, could be moderate, could be severe. I said, well, if it was severe, you would know. And if it was mild, he wouldn't be in a segregated classroom. Right? And so I was really pushing back on it because just like everything else, there's paperwork, loopholes, opinions. We're telling you what to do. You can't have this unless you do that.
Right.
The paperwork alone for a person with a disability in this province and Canada is astounding. It is cruel. It is wrong. In grade 4, I had to go get a doctor's note that said that Beckett still had Down syndrome.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't go away.
Exactly. Disabilities don't go away. You're born with
right?
it. Magically.
Why do you have to keep telling people that your leg was amputated?
Yeah.
Is
it still gone?
Exactly.
Is it still gone?
It's so outrageous.
Yeah.
That, you know, that a person, you know, like my son has to continue to prove throughout his life that he still has Down syndrome or has an intellectual disability. And then somebody gets to decide, what type of intellectual disability does he have? And then they get to decide, well, this intellectual disability is worth this much money in funding, and this is worth this much in funding. That's somebody's making that decision about my son or you or anybody. It's outrageous.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. Is I remember going back in memory lane back into the early 2000s when the other administration government was actually in power, and they basically cut right across every single ministry, like CLBC, PWD, transportation, healthcare, education, you name it, and yeah, they wanted to save money. And so I got a phone call one morning, and I had just got up, and my phone was ringing, and they're like, "Yeah, it's the ministry calling. It's Brent there, and I'm speaking. I need you to come into the office." Oh, okay. Well, what for? And we just have a meeting. So I came in, and they're like saying, "Yeah, so we need you to take these forms, and we need you to take them to your doctor to get you to be reassessed to see if you still have a disability or disabilities." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I go, so they're like, "No,
Like
this
you're
is not a
faking
joke."
it. Like
Yeah,
you're
like,
faking
Yeah.
it.
yeah,
I mean,
and
give me a break.
so
It
yeah,
makes me so mad, Brent.
yeah,
You can tell.
I
I'm getting angry now.
yeah, I was furious at the time, and I said, "Is this a joke?" I said, "Like, this is not April Fool's Day, right? This is not April 1st." Like, no, this is not a joke. It's mandatory. So I went to, and I had phoned my doctor's office, and the nurse, well, receptionist, but she was also a nurse at the time. And she's like, "Hi, Brent. Can I see the doctor?" "Well, I need to make an appointment." I go, "What's it about? Are you feeling okay?" I said, "No, well, actually, I've got a bad headache." I mean, does that count? Oh, so I told her about these forms, and she goes, "Well, the doctor is very busy. Like, it's going to take
Exactly.
time." And so we had to schedule a time. No patients in the office at all. So
Yeah.
that's a lost revenue for the doctor, for one thing.
It's a nightmare for
Yeah.
everybody.
And so he sat down and he says, "Look, I've already deemed you as a person with disability. You were born with these disabilities, Brent. They don't go away." So long story short, Tamara, he got on the phone and he said, "Sit in those little waiting rooms that they have for their offices, all
Yeah.
these little
Yeah.
equipment." And I'm looking little stethoscopes. I'm like, "Oh, what does this do?" I'm playing with these little gadgets, and the nurse walks in. "Brent, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm bored." She goes, "Okay, well, don't fiddle with those things because I go, "Well, I'm not going to break it." But I was kind of curious, like, "Oh, wow." So, I had a bad headache. So I had one of these little beds inside the room. So I laid down on the bed. And I was thinking, well, I'm going to take a nap because the doctor's going to be a while. I woke up and the doctor's standing there. He goes, "Okay, so I got to make phone calls now. So can you go for lunch and come back?" I go, "I have no money." "You have no money?" I go, "No, they cut me off for 3 months. No
Yeah.
money, and I had to pay rent. I wasn't living at home. I had moved out. I had moved in with a friend, and we rented a basement suite. My friend had her sister and brother-in-law owned a house, so we rented the basement suite, and it was a full one. We had like there was two bedrooms. There was also a den also, and I mean it was like the place was huge, but I had no money. I was on the verge, tomorrow, where like, "Brent, you're gonna have to pay rent. Like now you owe back pay rent. You got now half a month. If you don't pay, you're gonna have to be gone." I had nowhere to go, and I thought, "Oh my God, I don't want to be homeless." So
It's
anyway,
very stressful,
it
right?
it was, and like,
It's it is but it's always stressful.
yeah.
Like you're giving one example. You probably have 20, 30 examples,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And we
totally.
all do. We
And
all
they
do.
like the
It's
nurse basically paid me to go
ridiculous.
and have lunch. He paid me to go and have lunch
Yeah.
over at
Well,
McDonald's. I know, and
I
he had a yelling match. He had a yelling match with
yeah.
the government on the phone. He said, "You want a lawsuit?" Next thing I know it, 2 days later, I had two ladies at my door knocking. "Here's a form for you. You've been re-put back on the system. And oh, by the way, here's $500 check for you for your inconvenience." "What? For my
Yeah, because your
inconvenience?"
doctor gave them a piece of their mind,
Oh
right?
yeah,
But we don't all have that person in
no,
our lives,
Yeah,
no,
and
you know?
I just wanted to share quickly, very quickly, like my Coles notes. I could share a ton too. Like we could be here for another two
oh,
Oh,
hours,
yeah.
but I'll just share quickly, like when my first wife passed away again, like 11 years ago. There's a lot of stuff going on, of course, right? I mean, uh,
oh yeah.
the very last thing you want to do is be making phone calls to the ministry office and
Mhm.
writing letters and that kind of thing. But I did. I made a phone call saying I'm gonna send a letter in because I know that with the death of my wife, because she was on assistance as well. So
Mhm.
I knew that I would have to kind of be like financial figure or whatever have to be reassessed a little bit because she's gone, of course. So
Right.
I understood that part of it. I didn't understand that I would be clawed back. That was not
Well,
in my
of course.
realm of
Mhm,
understanding yet.
of course.
But I knew at least I would be reassessed at some point. So I was told by like I made about I think 3 phone calls, and every time I called, I was assured that they told me on the phone. They said, what we're going to do, Neil, is we're going to just kind of park. We're going to park your PWD status. Your PWD. We're just going to park it for a few weeks or a couple months while the estate planning is all getting figured out. We'll just kind of park it there, and you can call or you can come back into the office, and we'll just kind of we'll just restart up everything again. And of course, the estate planning took a while, and I
Mhm.
think I didn't check in again until it was maybe around 6 months. And I said, yeah, I want to like I've got everything kind of. It wasn't really done yet, but it was kind of the
Mhm.
ball was rolling, right?
Yeah.
Plus your mourning,
I know I'm
Yeah.
and
like,
I'm having to do all
right?
this crap,
Yeah.
right?
The
Um,
emotional
yeah,
load
Yeah.
is
yeah,
unbearable.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then I say, well, I'm ready to restart my PWD status again, and they're like, um, and I said, I sent in some letters like at the very beginning, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we lost those letters. We don't have those letters." And I'm like, "You
Wow.
lost them? You
Lost. Oh my
lost the
gosh.
letters?" And they're
Wow.
like, "Yeah, we don't have them." And then they're like, "I'm sorry, you're gonna have to reapply for PWD status again." Like as a Joe Blow, fresh off the street, I had to do a complete uh reapply again. Like they didn't even know me.
It's almost
And
like you lost your homework. The dog ate the paperwork.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like I have to do all this at the crappiest point in your
Yeah.
life.
Oh yeah,
100%.
exactly.
And and again we can transition to unicorns whenever we want, I guess. But the idea that the government says, if you have your wife, like will honor an exemption
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
money if you work at McDonald's for 8 hours. But if
Oh,
your wife passes away, God forbid, we'll have to like claw back that survivor's pension because you sure don't deserve that. So
Yeah.
we'll have
Yeah.
to claw that because we don't want to respect death. We don't want to respect dead spouses because that's just too far left
mhm.
field to even consider doing
Hmm.
that. Anyway.
It's really interesting because I do think that, there's a lot wrong, right?
Mhm.
And we could talk for hours and hours and hours about it. And I always try to think like, one of the reasons we started Down Syndrome BC is because we need solutions, right? And we need
Yeah.
people to step up and uh and and be loud and find solutions
Mhm.
to these serious problems that we have. The biggest challenge I find, especially with you know people who have an intellectual disability,
Mhm.
is society as a whole uh does not see value in people like my son, and I see it every day,
Yeah.
and it's really devastating. um and I think it's unacceptable. And I also, I've had many meetings. We've had many meetings with the different ministers,
Mhm.
education and MCFD, and we've met with CLBC. We've met with them all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They all say the same thing. They all
Yeah.
say they're going to get back to us. They never do.
They never do.
And none of them can answer anybody's questions. And so it makes it's crazy making, right? Like it's like the ultimate gaslighting,
Yeah.
Oh
to
yeah.
the point where you actually think that you're going bananas
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're hearing one thing, it never happens, and
Mhm.
then as you both probably know very, very well, you try to follow up.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're told the papers are lost, or, oh, I'm sorry, or, oh, we haven't read your letter yet, or, well, I sent it a year ago and I've been trying to contact you. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
because we're, we're all parents on our board. Our board is very small,
Yeah.
is all women. And we are tenacious, and we are fed up, and we have time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not going to back down. And as you were saying earlier, Neil, about, you're doing something and you're doing it not just for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like you are fighting this fight or advocating for something, knowing that this will help other people too. And that's exactly how I feel, because I have had some people say, well, you're always talking about Down syndrome. What about other people with disabilities? Anything that happens for somebody, if something good happens for the Down syndrome community, it's good for all communities.
Trickle
right?
down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people, if I'm advocating for my son, I'm advocating for every single person with a disability. And the challenge that we have I think, in our society is lots of people have a disability, right?
Oh,
We know this. We know that 25% of Canadians identify as having at least one disability. And I always say, yeah, right. And I always say that, the disability, people with disabilities are the largest minority group in the world.
Oh, it's
And
huge.
we will all join at some point in our lives. So, during the pandemic, in which COVID is still alive and infecting, Beckett and I just had it a month ago. When we think about that, and that's where my eyes were really opened, you guys. I saw how I've always believed in community care. And I've always believed that we would look out for we'd look around and see who needs our help, and we would help them. That's what community care is. We look out for our seniors, say, or we look out for, kids with disabilities or whatever it may be. And it didn't happen during COVID.
Well, and not only that, and I don't want to sidetrack the conversation too much.
Yes.
But I did want to, Sophie Louis, of course.
Yes.
I haven't been on Twitter for quite a while now, but I used to be on Twitter, and I this was back in the early days of COVID. She did a tweet that said, when she was talking about the uptick in racism during COVID, which was very significant, like quite significant, and her tweet was, "I feel othered." That was her comment, is "I feel othered," and I'm not going to steal, because I have no idea what it means to be racially discriminated against. I don't know that, but the reason why that comment hit a nerve with me is that I realized, like, I can understand that, like the fact of being othered. Like I don't understand the racial component of it, because I'm not I'm not that, but I understood the where that comment was coming from, as because as a person with disability, you constantly feel othered all the time.
Oh yeah, totally.
And people treat you like an infant, and they treat you like you can't do anything, and they talk to you like you're the lowest common denominator. I see it every day.
Yeah, like condescending, like talking down to the person, like they're not understanding. And that kind of, like, during COVID, when COVID started, like, this is like, I'll kind of give you a quick overview of how this podcast became to be. So before, when COVID, well, actually even before COVID started, I kept thinking, well, there might be something to bring people together. And I was kind of brainstorming ideas and talking to people in the community. I was talking to Sonia about it, and she says, I don't know anything about that stuff, and but advocating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of indifferences that were happening. I mean, we talked about the cost of living going skyrocketing through the roof, rental prices through the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, people with disabilities not being able to find affordable housing, long wait lists to get into social housing. I
No
saw a
family
lot.
doctors.
Yeah,
I
no
mean, it
family
goes
doctors.
on and on
Yeah.
and on.
So when I saw this all this stuff piling up, and then COVID hit, and then I thought, okay, the government then said, okay, well, we're gonna give people with disabilities and people on income
Yeah,
assistance,
I
aka welfare,
remember. Yes.
$300. And so the media reached out to Sonia and myself and said, like they know we're strong advocates, and so they
Mm-hmm.
said, well, what would $300 do to you if the government was to come out with this? Well, I had a feeling that they already knew, hey, this is what the government's going to do, and I said, well, it would do wonders. Like, I mean, people as a disability as myself. I mean, and I didn't just speak for myself. I said, but I gave an example saying, well, it would better my life. I can make different decisions of where I want to live. Maybe I can buy more adaptive equipment for enlarging print, small print, because I love reading. But I find that if I read for too long, I get eye fatigue. And then, of course, my doctor would say, stop reading so close. I go, well, I know, but I like reading. So, like, okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, long story short was I said $300 would do wonders. I mean, it's not enough. It'd be a start. So, when they put that in, then they took it away. It was only a pilot project.
Yes, I remember it very well, Brent. Yeah.
So we got on this little campaign about it, trying to keep it restored. So during that time, I said to Sonia, I go, I'd love to maybe bring people together. And so I reached out to Neil, and I said, hey, Neil, I've got this idea. I don't know what we should do with it. And he goes, I don't know. I said,
we should clarify too. Like, I didn't really even know you that well.
Yeah.
No,
like,
my gosh.
Yeah.
Isn't it great though?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I just like, you know how Twitter works. You know how Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but you know how it works. Where like I would see Brent's thing about 375, the rent 375, and I would like one of his posts, and then he would see like a comment from me about clawbacks, and he would like my stuff back, and then kind of just out of the blue, he just like calls me, and I'm like, why? And anyway, go on.
Yeah, so I reached out to Neil and I said, I've got this idea. And I want to bring people together, and I noticed that there's a neat little group that you can actually create spaces, and so we said, okay, well, let's wing it. And then said, okay, well, yeah, we'll give it a whirl and see how it goes. And I put this little group togeter, and I mean, it worked out good for a good while, and then
about a year.
Yeah, and then we decided to change things over to where it is now. But getting people together, I brought people together with common interests, and it really blossomed. And I thought, wow, like this is amazing. And then I started having different guests on, like members of parliament, members of legislative assembly in British Columbia, and doctors. I mean, you name it, lawyers. I mean, it's the list goes on. And other
Naked's been on.
Yeah,
I love this.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I realized then that like this has the potential of growing like really big. And there's still more work to do
of
keep
course.
growing it. And
but it goes back to that. It goes back to that, to stories, right?
Yeah,
and
to
listening to what people have to say, and that's how we learn, right? Like my experience as a parent of a child with Down syndrome is very different than another parent's experience with a child with Down syndrome. There's lots of similarities, and then it's very different for like my experiences as a parent, you know, and so my son's experience is his own.
Exactly.
And I'm very, very aware of that. And I understand what my role is as his parent. And I can only hope to, encourage other parents and caregivers and grandparents, and there are a lot, who to speak up, and
Mhm.
more of us are, right?
Mhm.
And people always say, oh, parents have so much power. Well, a lot of parents are scared to
Mhm.
talk, and they're scared because they get punished. They get
Yeah.
punished by school boards, they get punished by healthcare, they get punished, like they really do, right? Like no one likes a loud parent who is
Yeah.
exposing the
Yeah.
garbage that is happening. And they
Mhm.
sure don't like it when a parent appears on, a TV news story or in the
Yeah.
newspaper or whatever. Like, parents are having to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars so their child who uses a wheelchair can
Yeah.
access the playground at school. Like, are
Mhm.
Yeah.
you kidding? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in quickly again to give context. Like, I don't know, are you aware of Vivica Ellis? Do you know the name Vivica Ellis? She's
Hmm.
the foundation has changed now. They used to be the Single Mothers Alliance,
Oh,
and
okay.
and,
Yeah.
and they famously took the provincial government to court
Mhm.
over the clawback of child support payments
Oh, I think
from
I do
from
remember that.
Yeah.
from divorced parents, and that was in 2015, and I actually joined forces with them. I was like the one guy, so you had all these
Yeah.
women,
Yeah.
this woman group of like and I always when we've had Vivica on the podcast before, and I said like I think there's not enough appreciation, like you were saying, a pissed off woman is very powerful. Like because I see
Yeah.
my mom is the same. Like my mom
Well, we're
was a
mama bears, right? That's what they
well
call us, right? We're mama bears.
well
And,
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
yeah, and to give context, like my mom was a nurse, and so to be a nurse, you have to be, knowledgeable and strong. And so like I grew up and there's all these doctors that were always pushing back and saying, and again, we're going back 56 years, um,
yeah, right.
when my cerebral palsy, there wasn't a lot known
No.
about it really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And like you were saying about cognitive disabilities too. I mean, it was just assumed that
Yeah,
if you had cerebral palsy, you also had
exactly.
assumed you also had a cognitive deficit as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I had these doctors that would say, your son Neil is never going to amount to anything. Just be aware of
Yep.
that he's going to be a write-off. Basically, that's what they would say. And she says, I don't
Uh,
believe that. That's bull.
I
And
remember reading that so many
so
times.
here's my mom, like she was one of those pissed off mothers.
Yeah.
And again, this is why I was so eager to join the Single Mothers Alliance back
Right.
when they
Yeah.
were, because here I, so they were able to reverse the clawback, and then because I was, tied to them as well,
Yep.
I got some of that money restored, not all of it. I got
Yeah.
my son's orphans portion restored, but the
Right.
the bulk of it is still being clawed back. But
Right.
anyway,
You know what's
yeah.
interesting though, Neil, is what you said about your mom, right? And I think it's important for us to recognize how many parents came before me,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And those are the parents when Beckett was born 17 years ago. I heard from other parents who have a child with Down syndrome, and
Oh.
they reached out to me, because I was working in television when Beckett was born. I was on the cover of TV Week when I was pregnant with him,
Yeah.
and then I was on the cover of TV Week when he was about 3 months old, with him, right?
Mhm.
And I faced a lot of challenges at work after Beckett was born,
Mm.
and I can look back on it now and understand just how wrong a lot of it was. But when you're in the middle of something and you're feeling all these emotions and you're scared and your hormones are going crazy and you've got all these doctors telling you things about all the things your child won't do, right?
Mhm.
No one's telling you the things your child will do.
Mhm.
And it was a very, very scary time. But I had the parents before me to
Mhm.
look to tell me how it was going to be okay. Because they were, mums and dads like your mom, Neil, right? Who were calling me and saying, listen, come on over, come and meet my child,
Mhm.
and we would go over and everything just felt so much better because you feel alone, right? And I never want anyone to feel alone when because society makes us feel bad for being different, and they don't listen to us, and there's no value placed. And so, I guess really the most crass part about all of it is that I just don't think that politicians care, because they don't think that people like my son vote or will vote. And maybe they think that people with cerebral palsy won't vote, or people who are visually impaired won't vote. I don't know, but there, have you heard one, like, they're out there right now campaigning left, right, and center, all of them. Have
Mhm.
have we heard anybody mention people with disabilities
Nope.
yet?
Nope.
Exactly. Do we ever hear
Yeah.
anybody in any election? I
Yep.
can't come up with a time, federally, municipally, or provincially.
Well, I've made the point before, Brent, is like back in 2017 when Horgan was running, and it wasn't determined yet that he was going to be premier. But everybody on in the NDP that I was talking to was saying the first thing we're going to do when we get power, we're going to remove all the clawbacks. We're going to remove all, and like I've said before, it wasn't just John Horgan saying it. It wasn't just like one or two MLAs saying it. It was everybody. It was literally everybody. And like
Did they do it?
no,
Nope.
no,
Oh,
they
really?
they all got amnesia, and they're like, oh, did we say that?
Shocking.
Did we say that
I,
we were
I
going to
always
do that?
remember. I always remember one thing that the premier had said. Like, I'd go to convention meetings with them and stuff, and I was actually under their executive. So I was events chair, and
Mhm.
then I got into communications. So I was elected in under both. So I got to hear how everything worked, right? And
Right.
it was quite interesting. So I got to go to a lot of these conventions, and I got to meet with the premier, and so one day I was actually in the washroom. I was washing my hands, and guess who comes walking in behind in the door? I'm like, and look in the mirror. Oh my gosh. He goes, Brent. Oh my gosh, what are you doing in here? So we got chit chatting. He goes, oh, I better get going. They're gonna think I'm holding hostage in here. And we got talking about what it's like to be, doing the job as premier, right? And he told me
Mhm.
stories and like you said, it's not as easy as you think, right? I mean, the when he thought he could, get into that position, and there was so much that had to be done, so many hard decisions, good or bad. And I said, okay, but what about PWD rates? And
Yeah.
I right there, I said to him, like, what about raising PWD rates? I mean, our government is always looking at opportunities of making life better for people. I go, okay. So he goes, I have your back if you have mine. I said, well, I only have your back if you actually have mine. Like and I voted,
I have
right?
yet to find a politician that
Yeah.
has.
Yeah, yeah. And I always remember these little stories and of course channeling it forward. And that was just before the during the pandemic. We were living in Langley. And they were giving a media announcement about SkyTrain expanding all the way out. So Sonia goes, oh my gosh, John's in the city. So we barreled down there and all the security all around. And he recognized, hang on, tosses security aside. My friends are here. So we got talking to them, and same thing. Like, be careful about corporate landlords because some of them are good, some of them are bad. And anyway, just like all these little stories, like is like little pieces of the puzzle, is like giving you little hints of what to watch out for.
Mhm.
But I kind of look at it as a life adventure. But at the same
I
time, I
look
need
at it like every politician just wants to win, and they'll say whatever it takes to
Yeah.
yeah,
win. And
exactly.
the
They have to be
second
held
that
accountable.
somebody can actually sit down
Mhm,
and talk to people who have
mhm.
disabilities and
Mhm.
Yeah.
listen to what they're saying, Listen to people who are living in poverty.
Yeah.
Listen to people who have a disability and living in poverty.
Mhm.
Listen, 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 and then make changes. Nobody's done it. It's
Mhm.
not happening. People are dying in care.
Yeah.
People are starving. People are in group homes and being neglected. And we don't get to hear about any of it because
Yeah.
it is signed and sealed.
Mhm.
And I refuse to play nice anymore when I will call them out every single time
Mhm.
because this is a short life. We
Yeah.
are here but for a short time. And the older I get, and I think we are the same age. I mean, you mentioned
Yeah.
56. I just
56.
turned 56.
Yeah.
And, like the older, don't you guys find the older we get, the wiser we
More.
get, and
Yes.
the
Yeah.
less patience we have for
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
garbage
For
we have,
BS, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
you
I
know,
turned
and
I
I
turned
mean,
50. I turned 55 on the 27th.
oh, you're a baby.
I'm still a baby.
You're
So
just a baby, Brent.
I
Please
know.
listen to your elders here, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to jump in quickly too. I mean, I think we can all agree here. When I say this, everybody's going to say, yes. But this idea that the balance of power. You have all these politicians, and they're making decisions uh, on people's lives. They're
Mhm.
holding the balance of power of people's lives, and they don't really know anything. They're not
Yeah, they're not
educated.
experts at
They're
all
they're
in
they're not
whatever
expert.
ministry they're working in.
They're not
Yeah.
experts at all. They're
In
they're
their
not
best interest,
they're
though.
not educated on what the actual brass
Yeah.
tacks is, like what's involved.
Let me
Like,
give you an
yeah.
example. I had a meeting with the former minister of MCFD, Minister Dean, and
Oh yeah.
we've had a few meetings with her. And when I criticize a politician or government, it's not personal. It's never personal, right? Um, I think they're probably all really nice people and fun to hang out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have a job, and you chose this job. You were elected by the people to do this
Yeah.
job.
Totally.
I also recognize that ministers aren't really supposed to be experts, The
Mhm.
bureaucrats behind the scenes, some of them have been working in government, these bureaucrats, their entire careers since 1991 is a perfect example of
Yep.
one deputy minister who just was moved from MCFD. These are people who they have the power. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
change with government. They might move to a different ministry or whatever, but they don't change with government. And I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying they are so detached from
Mhm.
reality.
It's like
And
they live in a bubble.
they do live in a bubble.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So if you are living in Victoria and you are working for a ministry and you are making all these decisions, the people that you are surrounded by are not people like the three of us.
No. Exactly.
They don't have friends who are suffering. They
Yeah.
don't have friends who can't afford to eat. They don't have
Mhm.
friends who are homeless. They don't have friends who are in a segregated classroom. Because if they did know those people, they would know
Mhm.
it actually is real, and they would,
Mhm.
I would hope, have the empathy and compassion and will to change it for the better. But
Mhm.
nobody ever does. Governments change every
Yeah.
4 years, sometimes every 2 years, and people get shuffled around, and everybody's all excited, and nothing changes. And
Yeah.
so
Here's a
at
good
56 years old, though, Brent, I'm
yeah.
now going, wait a minute. I've been voting since, I was a teen,
Yeah.
and nothing's changed. As a matter of fact, it's worse.
It's actually way worse. And
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, PWD do vote, and
Yeah.
government
Oh,
council
yes.
have to vote, right? And
Oh, yes.
I talked to so many of my neighbors who are like, I don't know who to vote for, and on their PWD, I don't know who to vote for. Who do I trust? I go, they're like, they say all the magic words, but then nothing ever changes, and that kind of goes back down like memory lane. Like I look at like who can we woo over, right? I mean, we can get in there, and that kind of goes to the fact about a conversation. Neil knows where I'm going to go with this one. Just recently, that was back in July. I had phoned into CKNW.
Okay.
And the Mike Smith show, and he actually was taking phone calls, and normally he gives like a prelude of like an overview of these are the guests I'm going to be having on. But he started his show off one day, and he comes on after commercial break. Goes, so it's Mike Smith here, and today I'm going to have the Premier of British Columbia on. I'm like, whoa, and it kind of caught me off guard because it's like usually I can prepare myself, and I call in. I call.
So we'll say David Eby for the record. David Eby.
So yeah, David Eby,
Right.
British Columbia. So I can mentally prepare myself to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And I call in on a regular basis when whatever topic it is that interests me, especially if it's to do with housing or rates or cost of living. Transportation is a huge one for me too, but that's kind of on the back burner here. But anyway,
it's hard to pick the priorities, Brent, isn't it? Because there's so many.
Yeah, exactly. So I had the opportunity of calling in, and the host Mike Smith had said, "Here's the condition. The Premier is willing to take phone calls, but be polite and be very precise of what you want to say, and and be very short and just one question." Well, I called up, and of course they know how I is. I'm able to mash a bunch of questions all into one. So I was able to get a whole bunch crammed right in there. Yeah. And so what it was, I can just say to our audience, because a lot of them are like, well, can I get a hold of the audio? I go, unfortunately, I can't get the audio. I had it at the time. I wasn't allowed to unless I had permission by CKNW to get the whole thing. So I can, for our listeners and also to you, Tamara, I mean, I can give you a quick overview. So I called up and I said, okay, well, there was no increase in this year's PWD rates for persons with disabilities in the province of British Columbia in the BC budget. I said, I want to know the reason why not, and when will there be, and why wasn't there no increase? Because my corporate landlord gave me a 3.5% increase in my rent and wanted to know. And this was a question for the Premier. I said, and here's a question for you, Mr. Premier, I said, was why wasn't there, and how come we got an increase, but why wasn't there an increase? That came from my landlord. And still the question was dodged. It wasn't actually even answered by my landlord. Exactly. So it's kind of like a slap in the face to the corporate landlord saying, who cares, but didn't answer my question. And what his response was, so we've actually, we're doing our best. We're doing our best that we can. In other words, there's more to do. The same rhetoric, right?
Always.
And the other part was, well, we've also increased the earnings exemptions. So if you don't know that, you may want to look at that. Getting a job.
I'll just go try to find that on the government website. It's so easy to navigate.
Yeah, and he's like saying, well, maybe go and get a job. Well, I mean, and then
but that's it, Brent. That is it. You just nailed it.
Yeah.
That is what the problem is.
Yeah.
They think that people with disabilities should just get a job.
Yeah. The same rhetoric. Yeah.
And the thing is, let me tell you this, because this is like, I have a very difficult time with this. Last year in grade 11, Beckett came home with this photocopied thing about jobs, work experience, because of course he hasn't received an education in high school, but now they want him to pick what kind of a job he'd like to do for work experience.
Right.
I flipped through it. Let me give you some examples. Recycling, laundry. Do you like garbage picking up? Do you like I mean, this is all it was. And I have the documents. Of course, I photographed it. I plan on writing about it, but I've had to calm down quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we didn't circle any of them. I never sent it back. Because I made it very clear when we went into this life skills program, which we had no choice about. I said, well, what do the kids do all day? And I'm in the classroom. There's a washer and dryer in there, and there's like a sink in there. Like, it's like, it's built to not leave. Right.
Right.
And they said, oh, well, the kids, they do, they do things like they do the recycling for the school. And I said, oh, I said, do all the kids in the school do recycling? And they
Mm.
said, well, what do you mean? And I said, like, do like all the grades take turns? Like, do they, like the grade 10s do the recycling this week and then the grade 11s do it another week? And she said, oh, no. And I said, okay, well, then my kid's not doing the school recycling. I said, if all the kids are doing the recycling, for sure. I said, but my kid knows how to recycle. We do it at home and we have since he was born.
Mhm.
Like he knows how to recycle. Well, they also do things like they fold laundry and because they do the washing for, maybe the cafeteria or whatever in there. And I'm like, he also knows how to fold laundry, so he doesn't need to learn how to do that at school.
Mhm.
They go swimming. It takes, an hour to walk, an hour to walk back, an hour to do this, an hour to. So basically the whole day's gone. They stack the orange juice boxes in the cafeteria. No, no.
Oh my gosh.
You have judged these kids, these
Mhm.
students, before you even got to know them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you have determined that their value and worth is cleaning up after the other students
Mhm.
and stacking the orange juice boxes for the other students so they can grab them. No.
Yeah, exactly.
We are already 10
I know, Neil,
minutes
I could
past
just
the
talk
hour.
about this. You got me riled up now. I'm ready to go. Let's get
Yeah,
started.
Yeah.
so I don't know if you wanted to start to I don't know if you wanted to start wrapping it up or
Or did you want to? Or did you want to?
No, I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do. I mean, I will say I've really enjoyed talking to both of you. I think that what you're doing is extremely valuable. I love the variety of people you've been talking to. And I think what's most, valuable to what you're doing is the transparency, right? And
Mhm.
and I think that if we were all more transparent, especially government, uh, we would be so much further ahead, right? Like we all feel the same. We all feel joy and sadness. We all want to be able to put food on the table and have a shelter over our head. We all want to feel love. These are things that are important to all human beings, right?
Yeah.
And so to constantly push down people with disabilities and keep them from ever succeeding or getting ahead, right? The clawbacks are the most cruel thing.
Mhm.
Uh, they are cruel. And, I look to both of you to see what the future looks like,
Mhm.
because you're older than my son, right? And and that's what we do as parents, as individuals. We look to see what the road ahead looks like.
Yeah.
And and I just like I'm honored that you asked me to be on your podcast. And I feel like I'm learning something new every day. Of course I am. I'm a a student of life where I don't know everything. I only know my own experience. And I know that a lot of things that my son has experienced are discriminatory, they are demeaning, dehumanizing, and there's just zero empathy. And I don't understand that. I just don't understand it. I really, really, really don't.
And I think what's important to emphasize as well, and this was going to be my final comment maybe, is the idea that I grew up with my disability from birth, from day one. I had my disability, right? But I never really knew about the discrimination in government until I had my service pension clawed back. So I spent my whole life disabled, and it was only 11 years ago that I woke up, like I had got hit in the back of the head. So like I was kind of blissfully ignorant even myself as a disabled person, thinking, yeah, everything's great. Like I worked for over 20 years and everything was fine, and then I had my first wife pass away, and then they're clawing back a pension, and then it's like, holy crap, the government actually does this,
Yeah.
and
A rude
and
awakening.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so So again, that's my final comment, and it's kind of going right back to the pink unicorn behind your head, Brent, of
Yeah,
like
this one right here.
the idea that there's so much policy, there's so much government policy that's not founded on truth.
Yes.
It's not founded on truth, it's founded on pink unicorns. And it just bugs me. It's just like, let's just make up crap and let's just judge people before they, before we even know what these people are. Let's put everybody in a really small box and confine them and make their life super difficult and hold them down with a whole bunch of herd of pink unicorns and everything, and so yeah, that's
No,
my
you're
thought.
absolutely right. That's a really good point. And I think that the message that we continue to send to non-disabled people, if you will, is that when we put kids in a segregated classroom, or we say, oh no, we're not going to raise the disability benefit at all, like, I'm sorry, you're getting enough. We're sending a message to everybody.
$200 is a lot,
right? We're sending this message to everybody that, like, all the other kids in my son's high school, what do you think they think of the classroom that never leaves their classroom? You know what I mean? Like, not never, but you know what I mean, right? Like, they're not in their English class, they're not in their, they're not in their science class. And I've been told many times, like, well, your son can't keep up and da 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 da. But it's like, your job is to adapt things for
work with it, work
like
with the
my
situation.
son, right? That is your job. And then, of course, people argue, oh, well, education doesn't get enough money and blah, blah. Well, nobody gets enough money. Nobody. Right? Healthcare doesn't get enough money. Nobody gets enough money. Maybe it's time to peek behind the curtain and see what you're spending all your money on.
And where's the problem?
And now
it's not our problem.
Now it's a $9 billion deficit. But I don't know where all the money is going.
And where is it? What's it see for? It definitely disability rates did get increased. I mean, wow. I mean,
I know, right?
And I'll give you my kind of ending comments too, as kind of an overview of kind of pretty well what Neil's echoed. And like, when I was born with my disability, of course, I thought it was just visual impairment, but I mean, there's other cognitive disabilities that were kind of embedded in with it, like learning disability kind of went with it too. And it really wasn't diagnosed until I got into college. I mean, God forbid, where my mom was told by doctors, no, like he just won't succeed. He'll never go to college because, I mean, that's what was believed back then. And I said, no, I want to go to college. No, Brent. I mean, the doctors are saying that, no, you won't be able to be academically sound to accomplish that. And my mom always believed that. But then I said to her, well, I was going through high school and I remember talking to teachers and they said, well, Brent, if you really want that, go and achieve it. Like, one of my teachers always said to me, I was in grade 11, I was just going to grade 12. I had the same teacher. And for cafeteria. And I was learning to snap, but I had an eye coordination. I wasn't able to be fast enough. But she also said, if you believe in something, go for it. If you believe in what you want, if you're able to do certain things, work with it the best way you can. And it gave me that motivation. And so I said to my mom again, and my mom had brought me up as a single mother because my father had left when I was 8 years old. So my mom raised me and my brother, and it was a challenge for her. I mean, economic times, I mean, you can imagine. But she did the best she could, and she gave me everything that she could give me. But she said if there's other things I needed, I had to work for it, do a paper route, babysitting or whatever it was. And, I mean, how times have changed. But I remember coming home and I said, I want to go to college. She goes, then go for it. She said, who cares what the government thinks? Oh, you can't go and do. And I proved it. And I was very successful. And there was a couple of courses that I didn't get through, sadly, because of vision wise. And it slowed me down, and that's not being able to spend the time to go to the college because we had group discussions and I had to go all the way to Vancouver. I lived out in the valley, so it was a long commute.
No kidding.
And so I went through office administration, business administration, communications, e-commerce. I learned all about e-commerce, about
Mm.
intermodal stuff, and so that's kind of how I got involved in learning more about trains too. So I got really an interest in that, in like a customs brokerage. Like I got all the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It also went through like an accounting. I also went through the hotel management program. So
Wow.
I got to learn how the whole system worked there. Um, and then I did a career move. Hotel closed down after I got off of the job, and it just boom, it just blossomed, and then I ended up moving back home because I couldn't get the work that I had gone to school
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
No hotel wanted, well, we don't want to hire guys. No, we hire ladies. We have women in here. I go, well, I took my course. I mean, does it really matter? I mean, I can do the job. Well, we've never done that before. So I started kind of looking at it as my self-esteem kind of went down a little bit
Of
because I thought,
course.
well, like what's going on here? Like, my mom's like, well, I don't know. And so I kind of stayed low for a while, and I started working in the hospitality industry. And then I injured myself on a job for my corporation, and then of course the clawback started because the ministry said, well, that's unearned income. I go, well, I paid into it. I mean, EI. I mean, no, it's classified as unearned income. You didn't earn it. I go, okay, then why was it deducted off my paycheck? Why is CPP taken off? Brent, you're asking the worker. I remember at the ministry, you're asking too many questions. I go, I want to know the answers. Why are you doing this to me? Because
Stop
it's
talking common sense.
because it's regulations. So then I became to realize going forward that regulations need to be changed. And that's why we're here now talking about all the inequalities and bringing the problems forward, and telling the government, like, enough is enough. Like, you need to listen to people with lived experience, people who have disabilities. I mean, yeah, they live in a bubble. If they didn't live in a bubble, they're going to have a disability at one point in time in their life, and
They live
so
in a bubble with pink unicorns, we have to say, with
yeah.
pink unicorns.
Pink
Yeah.
unicorns for
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
so a quick overview is my advocacy continues going forward. Like, I love what I do, bringing people together, and I learn from people. It's not
Yeah.
about me, about congratulating myself. It's about congratulating other allies and other people with disabilities coming forward and coming together and speaking their lived experience stories with me, and finding goals of how do we fix the system? What's
Mm-hmm.
broken?
And
Mm-hmm.
we're only a few subscribers below Tamara.
Oh, there you go.
Just only a few.
Yeah,
We're
we're getting there.
almost there.
So
There you
Tamara,
go, right?
I'd love to extend the opportunity of having you back on again very soon.
Anytime. Anytime. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to both
Yeah.
of you.
I would love to dive in next time, and we'll talk more about, because we ran out of time, about the CDB.
Mm.
That's another big topic in itself.
Oh, man.
I mean, again, all the red tape. You need a
Yep.
DTC in order to get it, and they know.
Also, enough with all the acronyms. I can't
Yeah.
take it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
what is it we're talking about? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You start hearing all these letters, and when you're a new parent, you're like, oh, what is that one? And what is this one? And what is that? Like, people just, there's just, it's so
Yeah.
much.
Well, and also just to quickly call back to what you said too, like just name it for what it is. Like
Call it what it is.
You
Yeah.
had that comment earlier, and that's another pet peeve of mine too, is like all these things like differently abled, and
I know.
like can't you just say disabled, and that's more kind of honest and true of what it is. It's a
Well,
disability. But you have to,
the
you have to
government
say
can't, they have
yeah.
a very hard time saying that word,
I know.
Yeah.
And I always remind people that special needs is not in any charter. It's not in anything. It does not protect you, the words special needs. We
Mhm.
all have special needs, right?
Yeah.
So you either have a disability or
Yeah.
you don't have a disability, and
Exactly.
just call it what it is, and let's move on and fix it and support people and lift people up, and don't punish them for getting married or making a little bit of extra money. It's not like there's nobody collecting the disability benefit that is working a six-figure job, right? If
Yeah.
you're working a six-figure job, you're happy to say, give that benefit to somebody else. I've got my, it's like they treat people like you're out there trying to get rich off of your,
Yeah.
$375 a month. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Well, there's the mic
claw,
drop. There's
or
the
they
mic
claw.
drop moment there, Brent.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they claw off. You go, recycle cans, bottles. You go
Yeah.
and take it in. Oh, you have to declare that because that's actually income.
Oh, give me a
Really?
break.
Yeah. One of my neighbors actually had that happen where
Oh, God.
it was one of their friends had knew somebody and had said, well, yeah, so and so had collected all these cans, and next thing I know, it they get a letter from the ministry saying you didn't declare income that you earned, and he said, for what? He said, I haven't worked in years. Well, no, it was actually bottles. I mean, bottles. It was like about $8 worth of bottles. And
Oh my gosh.
And so they held the guy's file back because he didn't declare it. And so we went in and
I don't know how some of these people sleep at night.
Terrible.
Honestly,
I know.
like, please.
it's just
You
rotten.
could just ignore that and let that paper fall off your desk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's
Oh
like-
my goodness, guys.
Uh,
Well, it's been a
thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much,
Yeah, it's
Tamara, for
really great.
coming on today. And I look forward to having you on again very soon.
Anytime.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in today to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. And stay tuned for more upcoming great episodes. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.